They don't think I can do it. They think I'm too chicken to do it. I'll show them. Candyman. 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 See, I knew it. I did it. They can all suck. What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to talk about an oldie but a goodie. Candyman was released in 1992, was directed by Bernard Rose, and stars Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen. And it follows an evil mythological soul called the Candyman, who's accidentally summoned to life by a grad student, Helen Lyle, who then unleashes his reign of terror and horror upon her. Before I get into this, I found out that this was actually based on a series of books, or a series of short stories by Clive Barker, one of which is called The Forbidden. I read up on the description, and I can definitely see where this movie's synopsis got its idea from. And judging by the writing of this film, you can tell Clive Barker had his hands all over this, but it wasn't him that wrote it. Which brings me to my positives. Now, even though Clive Barker may have had a hand in this, he executive produced this. But the writing, which was also done by director Bernard Rose, he did a really good job. And again, he may have been uncredited, but I really do believe Clive Barker had his hand in the writing. Even though in the beginning credits, all you can see is written and directed by Bernard Rose, I really do believe and feel that Clive Barker had his hand in the writing at some capacity. It was done really slick. It was done really smart. It was just all around awesome.
I came for you.
And after what Clive Barker did with Hellraiser, and watching this film, you would have think that he'd have his hands all over it. But like I said, he just executive produced this. At least he still had his hand on it, and it was based on one of his stories. The gore factor was crazy. It held nothing back. It didn't overboard it, yet it didn't shy away either. For a movie based on what the story was telling, if this didn't have enough gore in it, it would have been stupid. In short, they used the right amount of gore and the right amount of intensity along with that, judging by the story. And speaking of, the story was great too. It was very compelling. It was all about this grad student who, like every horror movie, you always want to antagonize the antagonist. You always want to antagonize the villain and just bring him up. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a movie.
Candyman. She turned out the lights.
But she basically says his name 5 times, which is what you gotta do. Kind of like the Bloody Mary urban legend. This whole film reminded me of one big urban legend. Only instead of 3 times for Bloody Mary, you say Candyman's name 5 times. But like I was saying, it was about this grad student who just had to wake this evil spirit up by saying his name 5 times. Because in these movies, you always have these unbelievers. But then as the movie goes on, they get to find out really quick, the hard way. And she just gets pulled into his reign of terror. And it's non-stop. He puts her through hell, pretty much. And once the Candyman ropes her in, shit pretty much hits the fan. And there's really nothing that she tries to do that she could do anything about it. Basically. Everything goes wrong for her. I really gotta feel sorry for this girl. And also, speaking of Virginia Madsen, who played Helen Lyle, the main character, the one that Candyman drags through hell, she did a really good job. I really got into her performance. Like I said, I really felt for this character. She was being tortured to the max, pretty much, by this evil spirit. It's like, what the hell did she do to deserve this? Oh yeah, that's right. You called out his name like an idiot. And let's not forget about Tony Todd, who played the Candyman, the main villain of this film. I'm telling you, every time this guy showed up, side note, which is the first movie I actually seen Tony Todd in, he gave me the creeps. He gave me the chills. I'm telling you, this guy was born to play this part.
Be my victim. Be my victim.
He was the perfect horror villain. He had that hook for the hand. It was all bloody and all that. And every time he would show up on screen, you knew he meant business. He showed the right amount of intensity, horror, fear, everything that you wonder about that's in the dark when you turn off the lights, pretty much. And you say a certain name 5 times. Again, why does dumbasses always have to invoke the villain in this? He was a total badass. I do have a little bit of a problem with his backstory, which does get told in context, but I'll get to that later. But as the character himself, you couldn't go wrong. Absolutely amazing. One thing I feel like I gotta address, Candyman in a way was a victim himself. The film does have some racial issues, but I think the filmmakers handled it very, very delicately. They were very careful with addressing certain issues. Of course, this came out around the time when the Rodney King incident happened. And the filmmakers and producers thought for sure that because of that, the film was going to open up a whole big can of controversy and was going to fail miserably, but luckily it didn't. But in this film, they threw in a part of history, a very sad part of history that incorporated the Candyman character in a big way. Basically, it was the early 1800s, and certain things of interracial love, was prohibited back then, was forbidden and a big no-no, which was the Candyman's only crime, for falling in love with a girl who's the landowner's Caucasian daughter, basically. So in a way, Candyman was a victim. He committed no crime but to be in love. That was it. Yes, he's a villain. Yes, I get that he shed innocent blood. But he comes more off as a hopeless romantic, a tortured artist, who's also driven by the need to sustain his legacy by killing unbelievers to keep him alive. So it's not really about revenge at this point. However, I do feel like it should have been crucial in the text of his backstory, which is one of the negatives I'll get into later. But Tony Todd brought such elegance to that part and a very goth-like sense that if it wasn't for him, I don't think this movie would have done as well. He just has a very powerful presence about him, which makes him so unique and such a standout from villains like Michael or Freddy or Jason.
Surrender to me now, and he shall be unharmed.
Another little side note, the scenes where it shows Tony Todd throw up those bees and getting covered and having Virginia Madsen covered by all them bees is actually real. Tony Todd actually had a mouthful of bees. Even though he did sustain several bee stings, these bees were really young, so their stingers wasn't fully developed. But in the end, Tony Todd still sustained several bee stings. But he did have a mouth guard in his mouth to protect his throat, so yeah, that helped. The jump scares was on point. I know I hadn't really talked about jump scares here lately, given all the horror movies I've been watching and reviewing for you guys. But in this film, I just had to talk about them because the jump scares, it just seemed way different than the ones that they do in horror movies now. You know, you hear about YouTubers and reviewers always complaining about jump scares being oversaturated. I don't think they were in this film. They were on point. They were perfect. They didn't go overboard. It wasn't, like I said, overly saturated. They didn't overdo them. They didn't fixate on them. I jumped quite a few times, if I'm being honest. I really did. Philip Glass's score was perfect. The theme of this film, it actually matched up perfectly to the mythology of what this film is telling about this spirit terrorizing this neighborhood. To any urban legend, the way he did the score in this, it fit it perfectly for like the structure and the added chaos that this movie told. I'm mixed. The tone and pacing was okay. I did have some issues with it, but at a certain point it kind of felt like I was watching a soap opera. There's just too much dialogue in some scenes, and I found myself kind of skipping through certain scenes because at a certain point I was thinking, okay, get on with it. We need something to happen here. And there's just certain scenes that kind of dragged on. Again, I'm not degrading this film. I loved this movie. But it just felt like certain scenes kind of dragged on. But I digress. And here comes the negative, which I only have one, and it's about the Candyman's backstory. In context, you get a sense of what happened to this guy. He was the son of a slave back in the old slave days. I think it was like the early 1800s. And in those days, it was completely forbidden for a black guy and a white girl to hook up. Well, it told the whole story of how he was chased out by the townspeople. He was killed by him because he loved... It was just so horrible. I don't think I could get into specifics without ruining it, but most of y'all probably already seen this movie, so who the heck cares? But they tortured him, and they covered him with bees, and that's pretty much how the Candyman was born. I was feeling anguish, angry. I was feeling his pain. I was right there with him in this story, up to the very end. Now, he dies, but does he actually come back for the culprits that actually put him through that hell? You never find out. They never say it. I don't like it when things like that goes unresolved. Yes, he comes back as a vengeful spirit, but how long did it take for him to actually get to that point? And did he actually go after those jackasses that actually put him through that actually made him into the Candyman? You never get to find that out. And that's one thing I can never get past. If they just show a scene or in context, I don't care how they do it, several years later, the Candyman came back for all the townspeople and got his revenge. I would have been fine with that. And I guess the filmmakers felt like, well, that's not really important. What's important is the story going forward. But I don't really see the problem with them just adding a simple context. It's the only problem I had with this movie. So all in all, if you're looking for a bloody good time with plenty of chills and thrills, then this sweet delight is definitely for you. So, Candyman, you must have seen it. What did you think of it? Did you find it chilling? Did you like Tony Todd's performance? Did you find him as kick-ass as I did? Or have you seen better? Have you seen better horror movies? Leave me your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Like, subscribe, and comment if you haven't already. And don't forget, do not say his name 5 times, for that will be the last thing you ever do. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace to Reptastic.